We Say What They Can't Radio.
Welcome to the Now What podcast. I'm your host, Tasha Monique, and shout out again to all of my viewers that are still tuning in with me every month, subscribing. My subscribers are actually increasing, so continue to spread the word, tell a friend, subscribe, like, follow. If you're not subscribe to my YouTube channel, you can definitely follow me on Instagram. And my Instagram handle is now_what_podcast and the number 4. So remember, like, share, follow, subscribe. I'm going to let my guest introduce herself.
Hi, y'all. My name is Danny B, and I am the CEO of Transformation in Process. I don't just dress bodies and styling, but I address the soul. And that is through physical clothing, that is through the mind, through my books, and also through coaching.
I love that. Great. So that was actually my next question. Like, tell me all about Transformation in Process. How did you actually come up with the name, and then just go into depth about what it's all about?
So the name is very recent. When I first began, it was about styling and just dressing clients, in clothing. And it really was about making sure that your clothing, your voice showed up in your clothing. So when you stepped in a room, before you even said a word, people knew that you were there. They felt your presence because they saw what you were wearing. And prior to that, my name was Danny B. Styles.
I remember that. Yes.
So I was going by Danny B. Styles. But what happened was, in the place of me walking into this space, I started developing in areas. And when I would have consultations, I realized that I was going more into the counseling spaces and I was unpacking some
they don't
things
call
with
it retail
people.
therapy
You hear me?
for nothing.
Exactly. And my master's is actually in guidance and counseling.
Okay.
So this is not something that I am not used to, but dealing with people in consultations, I started to go down the place of, before we deal with what you're wearing, we got to address the things that make you see yourself the way that you're seeing yourself. So I realized that my styling was not just about the clothing, but it literally was about identity. And I knew that Danny B. Styles was putting me in a box of limitation because it was more than that.
Okay.
And honestly, one day I sat at one of my mentors' houses and I sat in a room and I was like, God, what does this look like? And what is my new name? And I heard Transformation in Process.
I love it. Literally, I love that you said it's just more than styling and clothing. It is a counseling session, because when you deal with clients, a lot of the times, sometimes it's just like a whole bitch fest about what they hate about themselves. Like, you want me to make you feel and look beautiful with these clothing, the accessories, the shoes, but you're already coming with the negative energy. Why do you feel that way? That is a biggest pet peeve.
Yeah.
I don't do the pity party. I hate my arms. Well, bitch, work out. What do you want me to tell you? You can go right on your wall and push your body 10 times. You can do that every day. You'll definitely see results.
And a lot of times people speak about their physical, but it's so much more than that, because a lot of times it's connected to trauma.
Yes,
it's connected to their soul work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I always ask people, what is it that you try to hide, right? And I question that. I ask in that way because a lot of times we pay so much attention to what we're hiding that we forget all the beautiful parts of us, and we end up covering ourselves or wearing things that don't even fit our voice.
Right. I met an older woman. I was shopping, and she was 70. She had an amazing body. She looked great. She didn't even look her age. And then in the fitting room, you had other women that was just complaining, and we're overhearing this, and the two of us were just complimenting each other, vibing. And she was like, you know what, young ladies, you have to appreciate where you are right now with your body, because when you're my age, you're going to wish that you look exactly like you do right now if you do nothing to maintain it.
Yeah, but you know what? That tells me that she's been doing more than just appreciate, and she's been doing her inner work.
She's been living, honey, 70 whole years.
And she probably has addressed some of her own internal issues to be able to see herself that way and speak about clothing or the way she looks and her appearance that way. So kudos.
How long have you been a stylist? Well, a fashion stylist.
So fashion styling, I would say maybe like 5 years, honestly. And it was not official yet when I started. Honestly, I didn't know I was going to be going into this. I was in the education field for the majority of my life. I went to school for education. My undergrad was in psychology, and my master's in guidance and counseling. I worked in the school system.
Okay.
So honestly, I was
shout out to all the educators.
Come on, educators. But I know that I always was into like fashion because it always did something for me as far as expression. And I knew how to look like $1 million on $20.
Listen,
you hear me?
right up in rainbow,
I knew
honey.
how to do it.
If you have style, you can get you a fit from Walmart, honey, and make it look like $1 million.
It doesn't even matter. So I remember one of my good friends, she was having an EP release and she was like, Danny, can you help me? Shout out to Ish Jubilee. She asked me to style her for her EP. And I was like, no problem, I'll help you out. And got Kenya. I designed the outfit. I had Kenya to make the first outfit.
Is that the one with the cape?
Yes.
Because I feel like I helped Kenya and worked on that with her. Shout out to Kenya Kersey. Actually, let's just pivot back. That's how you and I were connected. Like, I always host events, and you and I connected with one of the events that Kenya and I were collaborating on for Fashion on Belmont. You were first a stylist for us, then you were a model for us, and then Kenya was working on her P31 vintage, and then you styled me for that. So shout out to the connection.
Yes, come on.
And sometimes the sisterhood is real when it's authentic. Like, women can connect, collaborate, have business, friendships outside of the business. Like, it can
and it's
work.
healthy.
And it's healthy. It doesn't work all the time, but it can work.
Yeah.
What makes your services different from other stylists that are out there?
Because for one, I don't dress mannequins. And that's a real place. I don't dress mannequins. I also get to pick and choose who my clients are because you have to be willing and ready to do the work more than just putting clothing on. So we're not just putting on clothing, but it has to be something that speaks to your voice now and where you're going. And that is the difference. I don't just dress people based on the trend. It has to be connected to your identity and your purpose. And if you're not willing to do that work from an internal space, then you're not ready to be my client.
How do you make that connection? Because I know you often say like dressing people for their soul. And how do you make that connection? Like, what's that process? Walk me through it.
So for one, when a lot of people hear about me through word of mouth, right? Or just me marketing.
Okay.
Once they get to me, I have an intake form. When they go through this intake
How many questions are on this form?
It's 10.
Oh,
10
okay,
questions.
not bad.
It's 10 questions.
So
and
like,
out of the 10,
20,
no, it's
good.
10 questions. And out of the 10, 2 of them are uploading photos.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Yes.
So really 8 questions.
It's really 8 questions,
all right,
and then it's the upload.
Okay.
But even my questionnaires are different. Like I even told you earlier about asking people what they try to hide. I also ask people what they admire. Who do they admire?
So give me like 2 questions that's on there.
Okay. I ask people, how do they want to feel?
Okay.
Right? And I also ask people, who do they admire in the industry? And then upload a photo.
Oh, that's good. So upload a photo of actually yourself, your personal style, but also
the people
a celebrity, your
celebrity, influencer, whoever, anybody that inspires you. I don't care if it's someone that you personally know, but a lot of times we are inspired by the people that we wish we could be in that space.
You better
So
say it for the people in the back.
It's literally
That's
like
true.
a magnet attraction, right? So a lot of times I share with people when they tell me about, and I say, well, why did you choose them as a model, like in their fashion and their look? And they're like, oh, because I like the way they're so confident. I like the way that they show up. And what I do in that instance is I flip it. So instead of calling that person's name, I'm calling your name because literally it's showing characteristics of who you already are, but you don't think you can see yourself in that way. And it's very easy for us to see other people and not see ourselves.
Because we self-sabotage all day, every damn day.
And we wear our traumas like it's us. And a lot of times we live through those lens. So for one, people coming to me and going through this process, it literally is transformational. It's not just putting on clothing because that's for the moment. I could do a makeover and you look cute for the moment, but is that really changing how you see yourself? So when you come into in relationship with me, because it's a partnership, right? I don't do this by myself.
Right.
When you come into partnership with me, you are literally transforming, and the experience in itself, you'll walk out of here seeing yourself differently. And if you see yourself differently, you do things differently. So if you never wore hats before, if you walk away and you put a hat on, transformation has occurred.
Right.
That's it.
Right. Because everybody have that one or two things.
Exactly.
Like, I don't do brown, honey. I don't care what you say, Danny. I'm not wearing chocolate brown. No shitty brown on my skin up close to my face. No, thank you.
I've heard that too.
Yes. So, I heard you mention a little while ago about like turning down business. So what would make you walk away from a business opportunity?
If people just think I'm here to shop. If you don't want to do the work that pushes into transformation, I will walk away, because I don't chase money. I'm all for purpose.
That's amazing, because you know what? You're letting them know what they are exactly going to get with your services. It's not just like, I'm a stylist, I'm shopping, I'm going to dress you for your event tonight. You're doing more work that's a little bit internal. So Do these customers actually stick with you? It's like, now is it like, okay, we went to fashion and you dressed me for my event, but now can I get some like counseling?
So it's not just customers, they become clients. In the process of it all, let's say it would take me, I try to get people to book at least 3 weeks prior to, so it gives me time to shop if it is for an event. But I'm literally going through a process. When I have a consult, I call it the release session.
Say that again?
I call it the release.
Okay, the release.
Yes, I like literally, because you coming in and like I've had people, get your tissues ready. I tell people, because when we first meet, they're like, oh, these questions were a little different.
Right.
And then when they get into the session, we have moments where people are literally crying because they didn't expect to unveil so many things. So now with that, now we're starting from a process. Okay, now what are things that you don't wear that you would like to wear? Why? Because it's also a part of things you desire that you don't see yourself in. So if it's for an event, I step to things like that. But let me tell you, I love God down, right? I love God down. He is the core of me.
Yes,
Jesus is it. Jesus
everywhere
is it.
we go.
Everywhere I go. So at the end of the day, even though this is my gifting, I'm in it with God first. So there are things that God even reveals to me about people and what the vision of what He said, who He said they are and what they should be wearing.
Okay.
And I walk in that process as well.
I love it. So tell the viewers real quick how they can contact you for your services. Again, what's the name of your services and how they can contact you to collaborate?
So the name of my business is called Transformation in Process. You can find me on Instagram at transformation_in_process. You can DM me, or you can email me at connectwithdannyb@gmail.com.
Hello. And remember, you have to do the work. It's more than just a styling session. She is dressing you for the soul. So be prepared. Okay?
Absolutely.
How would you finish this sentence? On my spiritual journey, I discovered
myself, my own identity. Transformation in process is not just business for me. I literally live in transformation. I am the business. And the more I transform and come into my own identity, because I walked out traumas, you hear me? Traumas in the way that I saw myself, and even things I stopped myself from wearing because I didn't think I was valued. So my spiritual journey, I discovered me.
So during that process, you just said you don't wear certain things. So what did you like X from your wardrobe?
For one, I did not like showing skin in the beginning. First of all, I was a whole tomboy growing up. All right. I did not start wearing even fitted jeans till I was about 16 going on 17.
Okay.
And I started off on like a TLC type of look.
Oh,
right?
The 90s. Yes.
But it wasn't even because that was the trend. It was because I was hiding my physical body. Right. Because for so long, like, even like my mom, like people dressed me and told me what I was supposed to look like. So when I got the opportunity to dress myself, I was rebelling in clothing. So I didn't start even wearing like showing a little bit of, cleavage or stepping into my femininity period, like on my own, until I was in like my 20s.
Okay. Listen, I love a little leg. It's short skirt or no skirts. Well, today I have on a long skirt, but I prefer a little leg. And my aunt always taught me, like, you can't show it all. Pick one. So if you want the cleavage out, it's the cleavage. That's it. You want a low back, it's the low back. You want a high slit, that's it. Short skirt, one, not all at the same time. And it does make a difference because you tell a story, of course.
Absolutely.
And it's like trashy, sexy, sophisticated, elegant, style. Like, it all tells a story. Absolutely.
I believe that.
So on a scale of 1 to 10, how stressful is it being an entrepreneur?
It's days it's a 10. And then there are days that I'm at a 5 or a 6. And only because, honestly, because like I said, I didn't plan to go into this. God literally directed me here. So the 10 is when I am all in my flesh and all in myself and all in my head, double like overthinking. But I want to say like the 5, honestly, is when I'm like, all right, God, you brought me here. I trust that you're going to do what you need to do. And I'm leaning into you. And I say a 5 because honestly, I am still in a process of completely surrendering to who God called me to be for people.
Amen. Amen.
So,
would your business be able to survive without social media?
I do believe it will be able to survive without social media. Social media definitely is a marketing place, but a lot of the business that comes to me, although people engage on social media, is from word of mouth or the experience or what people see. And once people hear about the experience or hear me speaking at an event or whatever that looks like, they're coming.
Okay.
My clients.
So have you gained more clients from social media or just word of mouth and referrals?
Word of mouth and referrals.
I feel like now in this climate, like, social media is back to pictures again. It's just...
It is because people also don't have the full attention span to read or whatever. So it's like you have to.
They don't read. They don't be reading.
You know what? I learned that. My mentor actually told me that. Shout out to B. Kane, the CEO. She was like, Danny, you got to give like 30 seconds because people are not reading. You got to speak because they need to hear your voice. And she is literally pushing me in that area, in that department. Because
no, how is that going for you? I hate to like record myself talking.
Honestly, I am not where I used to be. So I am much better. But again, that also comes with me finding out more about myself and developing and doing my own healing work, because I realized it wasn't just about me getting in front of the camera and talking. It was about, Danielle, what are you dealing with right now that you don't want to put yourself out there on a larger platform, right? So it was me.
Okay. Don't hold yourself back. Okay.
Yeah.
What is one of the craziest client stories that you can share, whether it's good or bad?
Oh, I actually can tell you about something. I don't know more so if it was a client in itself, but it was the experience for me. I definitely had a client. It was in DC. We went out there to DC. I got there. I had one of my assistants with me, and we went out there like 2:00 in the morning. Honestly, this is when I had first begun. So I was like, oh my God, I am traveling to go style somebody, and this is like boardroom stuff. So I was nervous. When I say 2:00 in the morning, I was like, before we go to bed, can you show me your closet? 2:00 in the morning. I was sitting in the closet like, God, you're going to have to show me what this is supposed to look like. Because I done came all this way. I cannot mess this up. Like, what? I'm nervous. All of the things. Right. So I'm like, okay, so I have an idea of what's coming together. It's flowing. I get up in the morning. I'm nervous. And now more people are in the room. And this is something that a lot of people need to know. Oh, there's another story that was so
Share
crazy.
both of them. Share both.
So in this space, I had more people in the room, more entrepreneurs in the room, more creatives. And there were situations where I had to do a nip, a tuck, a pin, had to get things there. And I had my handy bag.
Right.
But like one of the skirts was supposed to fit like a pin skirt. And it wasn't falling that way. Like I was bothered by it. But everybody was making so much noise. And when I say noise, everybody has an opinion. Everybody is talking. Everybody is saying something. And I thank God for my assistant at that time. Her name is Yamada. At that time, she was like, Ms. D, you know what to do. Do not listen to anybody else and do what you do. That kind of like pulled me right back in. And by the time I finished, everybody was like, oh, shoot, we didn't even know that was the same skirt. And it was like, I needed that moment. So that's what it was. But if I didn't snap into me, I would have allowed the noise to distract what was happening.
Right.
And that could have been a bad moment. First time going to pull clothing, right? From a prestigious store.
Oh, okay.
In the
I was about
city.
to say
This is
showroom
second
or
story.
store. Okay.
Showroom.
Okay.
First time going to pull clothing, and my son was actually sitting in the car with me, and it was in the city, and I walk into the store. He had to stay in the car, and I'm so nervous because it's my first time in the showroom. The photographer that I actually partnered with to go and get the clothing, she had already had a agreement with the clothing that I was picking up. So we had an agreement with the designer themselves.
Okay.
When I walked in, it was not very kind, right? At all.
Sure.
And I was like, hey, I'm here to pick up such and such clothing, right?
Nobody knows.
These pieces. They were like, oh, well, we already let those pieces go. They're not here. And I said, oh, okay. But being a person that I am, I had already done my research on the designer themselves.
Right.
So I can recognize the pieces when I walk into the space. And they were like, well, there's other people here. You can just grab something. And I was like, I'm not going to do that. That doesn't show integrity for me.
Right.
She had an agreement with this designer. Even if I couldn't get the pieces that we had in mind, I'm going to grab every piece that this designer made. So I went in there just grabbing all the pieces before anybody could touch them. I'm grabbing all the pieces, putting them on my rack. And another gentleman, mind you, like I said, I shop high, I shop low fashion. I don't care. Creativity is creativity for me. So I had on like the triangle cutout glasses.
Right.
And one of the workers was there and he was like, hey, like, who are you? Like, I haven't seen you in here before. And I was like, I'm kind of new. And he was like, oh, whose glasses are those? Are those this? And I was like, no, I actually got them on the street for $5. And he was like, giving me side eye. And some other stylists were coming into the space. And I was in there for a while. I'm not going to lie, because I had to put my earbuds in, put on my good old music and take out all the noise.
Right.
And he was like, you're going to put that with that? You're going to put that with that? Like everything I was picking up, judging every single thing. And then when another stylist came in, it was like, oh, people who know what they're doing, they're in and out. That's what I'm talking about, in and out while people are in here for hours. Shade. And I was like, yo,
Fashion.
mind you, when I say that morning, God was like, put on this yellow jumper. And I put on the yellow jumper because what does yellow do? Yellow is like bright. People don't know. Color really brings it, okay?
I love color.
And color really helps you to be centered, right? And God was like, the reason why I told you to wear yellow, because you needed to be the light walking in the space. And literally, he was showing me how the entertainment, like the fashion space could be, it's like full of piranhas. And I needed you. And he told me, like, I had to be the one to walk in there and be the difference. So as I was walking in, he was like, you're going to wear that? You're going to put that with that? I was like, yes, I am.
What was his title? What were you?
A sales associate, probably, right?
Okay.
But just going all the way down to it, I did everything I needed to do. I took my time with it, didn't allow myself to be rushed. And what happened? That photo was my first time. Those photos were the first time that I actually was featured in a magazine.
Look at that.
Yes.
It's because you know what you're doing.
Photos where they automatically, they picked the whole line.
Right.
So I was like, look at that.
Kudos to you.
Thank
So I see that you have these 3 books on the table and you are a published author. Tell me about these 3 books and the very first one, second one, third one. Walk me through all of them.
Okay. Let's start with Love is Key.
Okay.
Love is Key, y'all. It's on Amazon, a blueprint for parenting. So for one, I did not know I was going to be an author.
Okay.
I actually started writing the books when I was in the Department of Education. Pandemic hit. One day I was in a classroom setting and I always write notes, and whatever I feel, whatever I'm going through, I'll write a note in my phone. I wrote a note down in my phone when the pandemic hit. This was a place where I was discovering myself too. Couldn't get my hair done, nails done, anything, right?
It was rough.
And it was like, oh no, I do not recognize myself. I don't like this.
Right.
But also I was in a school, so I had a class online as well.
Okay.
And in the midst of that, yes, and actually my class and my coworker's class, the kids were showing up because we engage with them, you know, and that's just how I operate.
That's
anyway.
what I say. If you made it fun,
Yeah.
the kids was actually logging on for the fun classes.
Absolutely. And we had relationships with them outside of that. So coming online, it was just like, now we're going to transfer the classroom to online. So our classroom was fine.
That was an easy transition. I just don't understand for the life of me why people had such a hard time. What are you doing in class that it didn't translate to Zoom? Like, do the same exact thing.
It exposed them. That's what happened. For me, the pandemic was a place of exposure. So anything
of those
that
poor
was
teachers, the educators,
and honestly, in anything, because if you were a person that was not doing what you needed to do to connect, it would show up online. But also, on the parent side, if you were a person that didn't know your child or what was happening in the classroom, you learned
with Tyrone.
when that pandemic. You hear me? The teacher wasn't always lying,
and Ashley
was not always lying, right?
Was doing in class.
Exactly.
Okay,
so,
we digress.
Exactly.
Tell us about this
in
book.
the midst of all of that, God was like, "Oh, sit down and finish writing a book." And I'm like, "What book?" And He was like, "Open your phone." I went to it, and it was the beginning of Love Is Key, a blueprint for parenting. At this time, my oldest son, I believe he was like 19 or so. So I had, if you want to say, officially completed, you know, the childhood years, and 19, I had an adult, you know. So it was like I had to start writing the book, and in this book, it speaks about my journey of just being a mom, you know. And I had my first son when I was 17. You know, I'm still with my husband, so that was a good thing, you know.
Shout out to your baby daddy and your husband.
Thank you. Shout out. But the experience of just being a mom at 17 and what that was like is what I started writing about in the book. And understanding that going through this process, a lot of times people look at parenting as just food, clothing, and shelter. But I learned that there is really a blueprint to parenting. And that's what I wrote out. And I say, it's not a manual to parent, but there's a blueprint. And the blueprint looks a little bit like know your village, know your support system. Every kid doesn't have the same support system.
No.
It's like apologize to your kids and say sorry, because kids are worthy of saying sorry too, right? And it also looks like, don't think that your life is over because you had kids. It's literally an accessory that's added to the individual that you are. So there are 7 steps. And the way that I actually write in this book is I have factual information. I have a story that makes it relatable. And then I have reflective pieces that actually ignite how you're going to activate the next step or whatever those steps are. So that is this book, and the book is actually named Love Is Key after the last chapter, and I guess we'll talk about that in a few.
Okay, where can we find this book?
On Amazon.
Okay, so you can definitely get Love Is Key.
A blueprint
for parenting on Amazon.
Yes.
And also in this book, you do touch upon being a teen parent.
Yes.
And what that looks like, but also being a mom of a son who is a part of the LGBTQ plus community.
Yes.
And I feel like in our community, we don't talk about navigating that space enough, because back in my day, like in my family, I could literally tell you if we had a cousin who was a part of that community. Well, cousin Keith is got a little switch in his you know, sugar in his tank. You know, he a little fruity. He a little funny. Just like if you have, excuse me, a cousin with special needs, you know, no one's talking about that. You rarely even see that damn cousin. Or how about the uncle who is a little too friendly with the women, or is a child molester. Like no one
swept
speaks
under the rug.
about it's swept under the rug. And every parent is definitely going to navigate that space differently. But how did you handle that? And what words of encouragement can you actually give, like a parent whose child just told them, like, hey, mom, I am gay, or I'm bi, or I now desire to transition into.
And the first thing I want to say, even for my parents, before I go into this, when you have an unexpressed expectation of who your children are, because when our children are born, we're like, oh, they're going to be a football player, they're going to be a basketball player, they walking down the aisle, I'm fitting to take them to their first date, all these things. We have unexpressed expectations, and it's not easy when your son says, like, mommy, like, I'm bisexual, but what I do know and what I did know is that it did not change him being my son and me loving him through it. And honestly, and I'm going to give you a little background. I'm a whole church girl, grew up in church, and this would be taboo as far as conversations. And a lot of times people don't have this conversation. My belief is my belief. And my son also knows that. However, even God's direction, I'm not anyone's judge, right? The truth for me is what I express in my belief. However, I don't stop saying, I love you regardless. And God was like, walk this out with him. And I said, well, God, how do I do this, honestly? And he was like, just show him love. That's it. And what I said to my son was, I love you no matter what.
Right.
This doesn't change your relationship with me. It doesn't define you. And you're still my kid.
Right.
And honestly, if I can be honest, like, we wept together because it was really a space of, I know he was nervous, but at the same time, I also expressed to him, this is not easy for me to digest either, because I'm also grieving my expectation of what I thought.
Right.
And when people don't think that those conversations should be had or should be hidden, honestly, they're meant to be had. Why? Because it's healthy.
Right.
And it's healthy conversation. And I had to learn and stretch in areas of what it looks like to love with no conditions. Because people say unconditional love, but I don't say unconditional love. I say love without condition. Because as you love people, honestly, I'm a reflection and a vessel for what Jesus said love is and who God is. So if I am shunning you away because of what I don't believe in or what, I don't agree with, how do you now, and I'm telling you I love God, how do you now see the Father?
Right.
So love is how I express that, how I walk through that. And just like anything else, it doesn't even necessarily have to be the LGBTQ community. Anything that a parent does not agree with, your children, our job is to raise them, right? But they still have the ability to make decisions. And
once they start thinking for themselves,
when they start thinking for themselves, it's not our job to throw them away because they're not doing what we say or what we desire or what we like or what our expectation is. You love them through it, and you become the soundboard and just let them know that you are there whenever they need you. And that's something that I always tell my son. My son knows that my door is always open, and he can talk to me about anything.
I feel like the hardest thing to do as a human being is communicate. We always say we want communication and we should talk and express yourself and words matter. But at the end of the day, adults, humans really do not communicate well. It starts like in the home, on a job, in your relationships. People really don't communicate well because you have this fear of, I don't want to overstep. I don't want you to misinterpret what I'm trying to say. I didn't mean it this way. So you rather just not say anything or you will tell a lie. So I feel like as humans, we need to do better with our communication and whatever that looks like. Literally speak from the heart. And I feel like if you are speaking from the heart, the person that you are talking to will receive it well. They won't receive it with malice or any ill intent. No, you're honestly sharing how you feel. And I should receive that.
That's so true.
Even if I'm at fault.
That's so true. But you know what I realized? People hear the word communicate and they just think talk. And that's not what communication is. Even when we start from knowing how to listen. Listening is an action word. And honestly, it's something that has to be taught. Because people think that hearing, because I heard your voice, that's listening. But listening is to actually understand, listen to want to understand your point of view, I don't even have to agree, but to want to hear where you're coming from. And that is the opening key, the opening part to communicating.
Right.
And knowing that I can speak about the depth of my feeling, even if it's my feeling. Like I told my son, this is hard. I'm not going to lie. It is hard. And he respected it and understood it. He understood me as his mom. But a lot of times people talk about not what they're feeling and the depth of it, the root of it. They only talk about what you did.
Right.
And when you can't get past that, instead of just saying, you know what, I missed you. This is why. Or I'm scared for you. I'm fearful. Speaking about the core things, people are understanding to that.
Right.
But we don't want to be vulnerable.
No, it's so hard.
Yeah.
All right, Danny girl. This is really good. Book 2.
Book 2, self-love is a good word. So everything has a testimony to it, okay? Self-love is a good word. Let me tell y'all how this book started. So went to the doctor probably like 11 years ago. I went to the GYN and they were like, you have a fibroid. I was bleeding like crazy, but I knew nothing about fibroids. You know, we don't really get taught about our bodies growing up in the community, you know.
Why is that, Mom?
I don't know. So
Damn,
I didn't
Nancy.
really know.
Okay.
So my period was there and I thought that was how it was supposed to flow regularly, you know. So it was heavy.
In the beginning?
I was getting my period and it was flowing heavy for at least 3 days, but my heavy was not normal. But because I didn't know better, because I didn't know better, I just felt like, oh, this was what was happening forever. And I also didn't know that fibroids was something that ran in my family, right? Because
the women don't talk about that. It's a secret.
So I had one fibroid, and that was my first surgery, a myomectomy, right? Where they cut the fibroid out. With that fibroid, I bled out and I had 2 blood transfusions, right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I didn't even know the depth of how serious that was because I was just learning about what this was. So the fact that I had to get 2 blood transfusions was crazy. It was serious, okay? 10 years later, I went back to the doctor. No, I've been going to the doctor, but 10 years later.
Like, it wasn't that one appointment.
It just wasn't that time. I definitely had kids in between that. So 10 years later, though, I went in and they were like, hey, you have fibroids, but I wasn't bleeding crazy like I was before. They were like, you have fibroids. And they went in and they were like, oh, you have 6. Of course, I was distraught because I knew what my experience was before. And I'm like, 6, what does this look like? I only knew what I was reading about. And all of that still wasn't that clear for me, right? So I had an amazing doctor. Her name is Dr. Arance. Amazing doctor.
Shout out to her.
And she literally, you know, like the wall, she drew on the wall what the ovary looked like, what the uterus looked like. She drew you hear me?
Because you wrapped my mind just now. I'm like, and one of the reasons why sometimes we don't understand exactly what's going on with our bodies because you don't have a doctor who's communicating
exactly
what you're going through.
And not like they're talking to their peers, but they're talking to me, the client, the patient that knows nothing, that is in an emotional state because I know now I'm going through another surgery.
Right.
So now in the midst of this, she draws it on the wall and she's like, okay, it's not that bad because it's on top. She drew it like a flower. She's like, it's on top like a flower, so we don't have to cut too much. And I was like, oh my God, thank you for taking the time to do this for me. So fast forward, we get into the OR, surgery is booked. I had just started a new job, okay? Oh God, I left the DOE, just started a new job. I was scared nervous to actually call off from the new job because I was engaging with families and I wanted them to know me. So I booked an appointment, so maybe like 2 months into the new job for me to get the surgery. I go into the surgery, ready for the day, 33 fibroids.
Huh?
I had 33. I look just like this.
That's what I was going to ask you. Like, you didn't have any swelling, any bloating.
No, I look just like this.
What was the size?
And let me tell you, the largest one I think was 10 inches. It was big, the largest one.
Oh,
and let me tell you, the week before, when I made the appointment to go to the GYN, right, to just my regular checkup, and before they told me it was fibroids. The weekend before, I was at my son's football game and I could not walk. And I was like, oh my God. But my appointment was on Monday and I could not walk. Like, I was crying. And I'm a person that has a high pain tolerance. So for me to be in that space and I was crying, it was like, no, something is up. So when they told me I had 6 fibroids and they were like, oh, the largest one was like 10 inches and it was big.
Right.
And they were telling me, they were breaking down the other sizes. So now, in the midst of the process of waiting for the surgery, of course, like at the end of the day, like I told you already, I love God. I love God. So I'll be praying about everything, all right? Because Jesus is a healer. Right. Jesus is a healer. So I went to Jesus. I went to him And I was like talking about my experience because what I found out after my first one was my grandmother was like, "Oh, I had a fibroid before," and I was
Now
like, "All right,
people
grandma,
start
now you will
telling
tell me,
you.
right?"
Thanks, Nana.
During this process, I prayed about it, and then I started feeling pain, like I was in pain, and I went back to the doctor. Was like, "I'm in excruciating pain."
This is after the surgery? No,
Before the surgery.
Before.
After I found out I
Leading
had
up.
fibroids, leading up to the surgery. And when I went back, she said that the largest one was deteriorating.
No.
It was dying. And let me listen, this thing like hit me heavy because people think that even healing and getting well is supposed to look like clouds and rainbows. But the fact that the largest one was dying and it was causing me pain, but it dying was a good thing for me, right? So it had detached because fibroids are fed by your blood, right? So it detached, it was turning gray and it was dying, and it dying was causing me pain in my back, in my body. So going to the actual surgery, and I remember it was Ash Wednesday because everybody had like the ashes on their head, right? So I went into the hospital and my surgeon, Dr. Ronce, was there. When I said this woman had the grace for me, she literally was just pulling them out. Mind you, I was under anesthesia, so I was not awake. She was pulling them out in the middle of me waking up. And mind you, let me tell you, I had one 10 years before that, and I bled out and had 2 blood transfusions. I had 33, did not bleed out, and did not get a hysterectomy. If God didn't do that, let me tell you something.
Won't he do it?
Let me tell you something, okay? For one,
I've never heard this before.
Let me tell you, really?
No,
listen,
not to this extreme.
Yes,
like I've known people. Yeah.
33 fibroids. She pulled them out, and she was like, "Oh my God, this is the most fibroids I pulled out of anybody's body." I was waking up out of anesthesia. She was over me like this with the photos.
Oh my God,
look at what we took out of you. And I'm still waking up feeling drugged.
Right.
And I'm hearing the nurses, and the nurses are like, 33. I'm hearing this, right? And in my ear, let me tell you something. In my inner ear, I could hear God's voice, and I could hear him saying, "And I'm still here with you. And I'm still here with you." My grandmother had just passed away probably like a year or so before that. And that was a big thing because my grandmother was like a mother to me.
Right.
And I heard a nurse's name, and her name was Esther. And they called the nurse's name. It was my grandmother's name.
Esther?
Yes. And literally, I can hear God saying, "And I'm still here with you." Because if people don't know, 33 is a Jesus number. It's like your Jesus year. And it was 33 fibroids that they took out of me. And when I walked into the room, and to know that I didn't bleed out from 33 fibroids. First of all, how was 33 fibroids in my body? And nobody knew. And where was it? And nothing was showing up. And I was not in any pain. I was not bleeding. It was crazy, right? So now, going through that place, they did like the bikini cut or whatever. Now I have to be off of my new job. Before I was like, "Oh, I'm going to just go through the surgery. I've been here before. I'm going to just work from home. It's fine." No, I also heard God say, "Nope, take all the time."
How long were you out of work?
2 months.
2 months.
2 months. I was like on my feet, but I'm in bed. But at the same time, God was like, this is the time where he said the 33 years, that was also coming into my 40th year. And let me tell you the breakdown. Let me tell you why God is so real to me, because only God can math like this and break it down for me. He said it was 33 years of trauma. 7 years old, I was living with my grandmother until I was 7 years old. After that, I felt like a lot of things happened to me where I was suppressing. Up until then, I was speaking. I had a voice. I was suppressing a lot of things after 7 years old. 7 plus 33 is 40. This was my 40th year.
You're into numbers too.
People don't know, and when people don't like, I don't praise signs and praise numbers, but I know that there is reason and there is connection to them, right? So in the 33 and then the 7, and it was my 40th year, people don't know. Every decade, there is literally a transition that's happening with you. At 30, you wake up and you're like, wait, I'm starting to feel something I didn't feel before physically, right? At 40, it was like, I feel like I like elevated to something totally different. You hear me? For my 40th year, it was a new plateau for me. So God could not do anything with me withholding all that trauma. He said every year it represented 33 years of trauma. So in the midst of all of that, this is where this book came from.
And tell me the name of this book again.
Self-Love. It's a good work.
And what's in this real quick? Oh, sorry, girl. What's in this book real quick?
This book doesn't just break down practically how we treat ourselves, but it is rooted on 1 Corinthians 13, where the Bible speaks about love, but not in the way people speak about it in the church. Because the first thing it says is love others as you love yourself. And I speak about people always say, oh, love others, but they whisper as you love yourself. That's actually a command, but it's like, how are we loving ourselves? So literally I break down what it looks like in that, from loving yourself first, and then how it pours over into loving other people.
Okay.
Also, what I speak about is how loving yourself and how we see yourself, how it operates even in the brain, and how we see ourselves, what we do, how we see ourselves, how we feel about ourselves, how we see ourselves. It actually speaks to our action and our belief system. And that has to do with how we love ourselves.
And some people honestly don't love themselves enough. They love themselves just a little bit or conditionally.
And that love yourself, people like, oh, love yourself and self-care, right? And they speak about it. It's like, oh, because I get my nails done, I get this. There is an expiration date to that. And when that is done,
damn a nail.
When that is done, what is at your core that says, if I stand in front of the mirror naked, would I still love who I see and who's looking back at me? That's what this book.
True
this book
testimony.
goes into the depth of what that looks like.
And you can get that on Amazon. Now tell us about your third book. Is that the latest book that
this
you...
This book dropped in 2024.
So this is a new book.
Yes, this book just dropped in 2024 of February. And this is called The Heart of Intervening Early.
Okay.
So I mentioned that I had left the Department of Education and I went into a new job. That job, I'm the early intervention ambassador. So I operate helping families to navigate the special education space.
We need more of that.
Yes.
Early intervention.
Early intervention.
As early as how early?
Zero to 3 years old is the early intervention space. And then for the Committee for Preschool Special Education, it's the 3 to 5. And then we have school age, that's Committee for Special Education. It's 3 different categories, right? So I am in this space where I work for a non-for-profit, right? A community, led by the community organization. And I am the ambassador of early intervention. And I work with the Department of Health to help families not only navigate this process, but to understand it. So a lot of times when people enter into, just like you said, you were mentioning earlier about special education and what do we hear about that cousin, right? And a lot of people look at it like there's a lot of stigma. It's like, oh, I don't want them to have that all their life, or, my kid is smart.
Right.
And they think that that's what it's about.
Nothing's wrong with them.
It has nothing to do with that, right? So I express what that looks like for parents by empowering them first, letting them know their rights, right? And also dealing with their feelings, because people think just because you know about it means that your heart is supposed to match your knowledge. And that's not the truth. I also have a son who has an IEP, an individual education plan, who went through the process of special education, right? So even with me, I worked in District 75, which is a school that deals with specific classrooms for special needs children, right? I've worked with 3 to 5 year olds that had special needs. And when I found out my son needed speech and he needed occupational therapy, right? When he was talking, I was like, we were interpreting everything for him. And coming from a background, West Indians, it was like he didn't get his hair cut till he was 2, all of the things that we say, right? All the things we say. And it was just like, but I know the area. I know the setting. I'm in this. This is where I work. But my heart was screaming something different from my mind. And that's when everything else started to come up. But at some point, I had to make a decision and say, if I don't get it now, it's going to be harmful for him. So it's the best decision. And what I realized is a lot of families don't understand that. So I speak about the heart of intervening early, not just for providers to know, not just for families to know, but anybody that comes across a child with special needs, how we deal with it from a place of empathy first before we even jump into the knowledge piece. And the heart of intervening is not just about special needs in itself. We need to intervene early in a lot of things we see that we don't touch.
And I like that you said like dealing as a unit, because once you but once you find out that your child is developing a little bit different, first, like mentally what that does to the parent. It's a lot of stigma around it. You start to feel like, oh my gosh, what did I do? Yes, exactly. I'm gonna be criticized, what my family and
Judged.
friends are gonna have to say.
Shame,
oh,
guilt,
all of
the
it.
things.
All
Yes.
of the
Yes.
things. And
then your
it's
own
not
traumas.
a conversation,
And then your own
too.
traumas.
Yeah.
People don't talk about it.
Not enough, because I mean, how often do, like, just within your like family circle or your girlfriend circle, like, you don't bring your kid or that kid, because you don't want anybody asking questions, staring, judging, like you say, shame, guilt. Like, no. Even I noticed too this year, more celebrities are beginning to talk more about their special needs children, family members, actually showing them.
Absolutely.
Having videos.
Because you wouldn't know.
Pictures. You wouldn't. It's so many celebrities out here with special needs children, and you never would have known.
Because of the stigma. And I want to say
why
to people.
is that?
Because of a stigma, first of all, it's the experience behind it. Whatever people's trauma was behind special education. We used to say the yellow short bus, or,
jokes for days. He's slow.
Kids. Yes. And they thought that it was connected to intelligence. And that is not true, right? Some of the most successful or amazing people actually probably had special needs or had some form of development, but it does not have anything to do with intelligence. It just means that your child is not developing at the level of the kids that are standardly, like what that looks like for the standard, right? Children their age. And honestly, what I share with people is a stigma should not be just dismissed, because a stigma is connected to a myth. And if people look up the definition of a myth starts somewhere where there is truth. And based on how you have an experience emotionally, you spread that. And now when that goes into the community, that's word of mouth. People don't know that's a science. Do you hear me? It's a science. And literally, that's how stigmas are created. So when I come into contact with families, I do not disregard what they feel. I actually apologize for their experience and what they feel. And then I replace it with the truth. By showing result and evidence.
That is so powerful. Yeah. How do they get your services?
So
tell us real quick. Yes.
I do work with an organization as far as helping families get signed up for early intervention from 0 to 5 years old. That's the age group I work with. But outside of that, you can also DM me or press connect with Danny B, and I can support you in that as well.
Okay, so before we go, I just have a few questions.
Sure.
Okay, what is the most valuable lesson you've learned since turning 40?
Oh my, that boundaries are important. And people will treat me the way that I teach them how to treat me. These are things that and my voice is important as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
How's your relationship with your father and your brothers?
Ooh. So, my father, my relationship is a lot better. I can officially say I'm learning what it feels like to be a daddy's girl. And that came through places of healing, because that wasn't the experience I had with my dad growing up. But coming into an older age, we've been able to sit down, and my dad has been able to apologize for any shortcomings or anything that I experienced. And we actually make sure we have our mandated meetups once a month.
Nice.
Just to sit down and talk. So I love my dad. He has always shown up, even in my adulthood, through processes of trauma. When I am dealing with things, I'm usually just zero in and focus, and everybody else would see me as MIA. But it's because I felt like the weight was on me, okay? And my dad will always call me on hey, haven't heard from you in a while, are you okay? So he always showed up with a place of love, right? With my brothers,
how many brothers do you have?
I had 4 brothers. Okay. One of my brothers passed away from cancer at 19, osteosarcoma. That's cancer of the bone. We were really close. We were 2 years apart. I have an older brother from my father. He was actually here, I think, last month or so.
Okay.
Yes.
He was a guest on my show. Yes.
That is my older brother. My relationship with him is amazing. It's great. Learning how to have an older brother,
Mm-hmm.
right? I do have another older brother and a younger brother, and we do not have an active relationship.
Oh,
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
So that comes from places of also trauma
Oh,
and
okay.
just what that growing up with my family
Mhm.
and what that looked like. I don't have a relationship with my mom now.
Mhm.
You know, love her dearly, wish her the best, but it wasn't a healthy space for me. My brother, it was very much so similar with my mom, my oldest brother, and my younger brother. He was like a first kid to me, you know, but there was breakdown in that as well. And I know that I am only accountable for how I show up and how I respond. Anything that comes from anyone else is their responsibility. So was it painful? Yes, it was. Was it painful knowing that you have family that you're not connected to? Yes, it is. But Joseph went through a whole situation. Joseph in the Bible went through a whole situation where his siblings sold him into slavery. And it literally is bigger than me.
Right. You know what? Well, I hope that your family unit can find like some common ground and start healing and strengthening those relationships, because I do know that it is a struggle, especially when you are at odds, with your actual parents, your birth parents.
Yeah.
And it is hard. And I feel like, at the end of the day, it takes mature adults to actually take ownership and accountability. And
Yep.
once we get past that, then we can now start healing and repairing a relationship. And that's with your parents, your siblings, your children, friendship.
And what I've recognized in that is I had to take the responsibility of healing, whether people were in it with me or not. And
put them on
I took
pause, honey. Listen.
because healthy is all I'm doing, right? And even in places where I knew I had to show up, no matter what people did, no matter what people said. And it's something that I even tell my kids, like, no matter what people do to you, you don't change who you are and how you show up because of how they decided to show up. So that's the way that we keep it healthy. And even when it comes to that, I am doing my healing. I am teaching my kids what that looks like to heal, and counseling is a love for me. Okay. And like I said,
shout out to all the people who go to therapy.
I love a couch,
talk to a counselor. Listen, there's nothing wrong with seeking outside help and talking through your feelings. We promote that here on the Now What podcast. This is navigating life in
mental
your 40s.
Wellness.
Okay. So I just want to give a shout out again to Miss Danny B and coming to shed all of her light on my show. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for
Thank you for
having
sharing
me.
that. Again, everybody, continue to tune in with me once a month. If you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do so, or follow me on Instagram. This is Tasha Monique, and see you next time.